So talk about some serious things ranging from student debt to how we tackle some of the state and the world's grand challenges, from widespread hunger to tackling the inexcusable achievement and opportunity gap we have in K through 12 education in Minnesota. But first things first, how about Floyd? I had hoped to bring Floyd along with me. I try to keep him in close sight, but he had some other speaking engagements this afternoon, and he's out and about. So it's a great way to start the week, and just a little bit of an emphasis in one area of the impact the university has on the state. And a victory like that does bring good spirits to all of us. After the game, the locker room was just electric with excitement. Really wonderful student athletes on that team and an absolutely first-class coaching staff, so we can be proud of that. So speaking of impact, the University of Minnesota does affect just about everyone in the state, as alumni, parents, students, patients, arts lovers, sports fans, you name it. The University of Minnesota has a hand on it. And so let me tell you a little bit about the micro impact that the university has on this area. And I'm an engineer, as was mentioned, and I like numbers. So for the 3 senatorial districts around here, number 34, 36, and 40, so Senators Limmer, Eaton, and Hoffman, there are 11,000 alumni from all 5 of our campuses living in this district. 160 MDs, 37 veterinarians to take care of your pets, 85 dental hygienists to clean your teeth, and about 150 lawyers to sue people. So right now, there are more than 2,000 young people studying on our 5 campuses, and nearly 700 of our employees live in the area of this chamber. And they bring home about $37 million in salaries to promote your economy, work in your companies, pay taxes, and create new businesses. And so that's just the scope of the university in 3 Senate districts out of 67 in the state. But we're not just a local institution, we're a global institution as well. And we're global in a world that is increasingly small with a global economy and a diverse set of partners preparing students for the real world that they have to enter. We, of course, have 19 Fortune 500 companies, public companies in the state who operate around the world, as well as the private giants, Carlson and Cargill. But none of them carries the name of the state of Minnesota like the University of Minnesota does. That brand, that university brand, is strong around the world, and it's an important part of who we in this state are. So let me tell you about 20 alumni that I met just last week in Seoul, Korea. I was one of just 2 American university presidents invited to speak at a global conference about the future of research universities. And the other American university president there is also a graduate of the University of Minnesota in chemical engineering. He's the president of Boston University. I had a lunch with a little more than a dozen prominent members of Seoul's chemical engineering community and the head of the Minnesota Trade Office in Korea. I spoke at one of Korea's top universities, SKKU, whose president is a University of Minnesota graduate, PhD in economics. There's a theme here that I'm trying to make. And they treated me like the football team treated Floyd. It was really an honor to be with them. The website you can see there. They were just incredibly gracious in welcoming, and just one of the many important partners we have around the country. We rank around the world. We rank 3rd in the United States in terms of the number of undergraduates we send to study abroad, and they come back to Minnesota as better educated global citizens. According to the Shanghai World Rankings, we are the 30th best university in the entire world. Out of literally hundreds and hundreds of universities, we're 30th. The U.S. News and World Report has us as 9th public in the world, and the 3rd in the Big Ten. So it's a university that you should be proud of. So we're moving forward in a variety of new ways, and I'm particularly excited about a new strategic plan that we have developed. And I understand that strategic plans have a similar effect on people like root canal or, other things that you don't like. But pay attention to this one for just a little bit. It's ambitious, it's global in scope, but it's grounded in Minnesota. So this is a plan that is going to draw from the energy that's at the intersection of university resources and ideas and people and the needs of the state of Minnesota, the country, and the world. And that plan, ranging from Brooklyn Park to Beijing, is organized in several important ways. So first off is that the University of Minnesota will be preeminent in solving the grand challenges of our diverse and changing world. So we're going to draw on our research expertise in a variety of interdisciplinary ways to bring these solutions to grand challenges. Grand challenges like food and food safety, the use of water around the world, the elimination of disease, the eradication of poverty, grand challenges. We'll recruit and promote field-shaping researchers. We will bring the people who are creating new fields, creating new knowledge to Minnesota and retain them here. We'll take advantage of our unique location. The Twin Cities campus is a rare beast. It's in a major metropolitan area. You cross from the East Bank to the West Bank across the national park and one of the great rivers of the world. It's co-located with the state capitol, home to Fortune 500 companies, as I mentioned. It's an enormously interesting place for the Twin Cities campus to be. And of course, the coordination of that campus activity with what goes on in Duluth and Crookston and Morris and Rochester, incredibly important leverage and synergy for the state. My favorite part of this strategic plan is the idea that we will actively reject complacency, which is a great phrase, reject complacency. So that means that we will hold ourselves to higher standards in who we hire and who we promote. We'll look at what we do ourselves and others and say, can we do this better? Can we be more effective? Can we be a better leader? Can we be a better educator? Can we be a better university citizen in the work that we do every day? That goes from faculty to staff and students to postdoctoral researchers. All of us will look and focus on doing better. I'm excited about that, and I think it will continue to move the university forward. We've doubled our 4-year graduation rate over the past decade, and we see a 5-year graduation rate at 75%. We retain our freshmen to become sophomores at over 90%. And in fact, the students of color at the University of Minnesota come back for their sophomore year at a slightly higher level than the average student body. And that tells us something important about what we're doing in that area. We've also aligned our efforts around a research initiative called the Minnesota Discovery, Research, and Innovation Economy. You have to capitalize the V to make a word, but the word it makes is MnDrive. And MnDrive was an important legislative initiative last year, and it enables us to bring state dollars to tackle 4 key elements that are important to the state in the future of Minnesota and the country. And they are food production, safety, and protection. We're home to a National Center for Food Protection. Agriculture is 20% of the state's economy. Robotics and sensors for advanced manufacturing, coming back to Minnesota. Controlling technology around water use and water purification, important obviously for industries in Minnesota. But when you think about the future of the state of Minnesota in the water area, we are the Saudi Arabia of water. We are the Saudi Arabia of water, and the ability for us to use that important resource correctly and smartly is very important for the future of the state. And finally, neuromodulation, which is a brain science initiative that builds on our position as a leading hub for biomedical device industry. You can think of a neuromodulation approach as a little bit like a pacemaker for your brain. Put electrodes in, you put electrodes in, and modulate the currents through them in important ways, and you can control and mitigate the effects of many central nervous system diseases. Another key element of our vision for the university is to have an accessible and affordable university. We're a diverse and changing state. We're a state with deep economic and educational disparities. So it's critical that we recognize that the road to success is paved with education. It always has been, always will be, and we have to be accessible and affordable to the people in Minnesota who can come to the University of Minnesota. So what does that mean? First off, it means keeping tuition down. In the upcoming legislative session, we're seeking again to partner with the state for a tuition freeze for Minnesota resident undergraduates for the second session in a row, and to extend that freeze to Minnesota resident, graduate, and professional students. That freeze would positively affect about 50,000 families. And it means that if we can make that happen, a student who entered the university in 2012 would have had no tuition increase over her 4 years, which is what families in Minnesota need for planning. Continue to be the most affordable four-year institution in the state for families making less than making less than $30,000 a year, and are among the most affordable for families making $75,000 or less. But of course, the national debate in higher education that was featured on the front page of the Star Tribune today is the story about student debt. So let's talk about this in a clear way. First off, the value of a public college degree for our students in our state has never been higher, never been higher. And the cost, unfortunately, has also never been higher. Again, although resident Minnesota tuition, undergraduate tuition, is $12,600, which is a pretty good deal. Now, that does create a burden on many families, and I know and understand that student debt can linger and it will affect early stages of our students' careers. So we worry about that. But frankly, let me tell you a little bit about the experience in Minnesota that gives some perspective on that debt, which sometimes tends to focus just on the outliers, a small number of students with $75,000 or $100,000 in undergraduate debt. Those are horror stories. They reflect some bad decisions, I think, made by students or families. But it's important to think about this debt a little bit more deeply than just that. So when we talk about the average debt, it is the average debt of students who have debt. It's in fact not as you would calculate average in any other thing, which would be to take all of whatever it is divided by the number of people. It's instead the definition of average of those people who have debt. So to take an extreme example, if we had 5,000 people graduate from the University of Minnesota and 4,999 of them were debt-free and one had $100,000 in debt, the average debt of those students with debt would be $100,000. Not representative of the real situation around debt. 37% of our students graduate with no debt at all. So let me show you a graph, and here it is. This is a histogram. It's a little technical, I apologize, that shows the number of people who graduate with certain amounts of debt. The big bar on the right is the number of people who graduated with no debt. And then you see the histogram. A good chunk of these students graduated, as you can see, with $1,000 in debt, 216 of them. 529, $5,000 in debt. And here, of course, are the outliers. 2 people managed to graduate with $120,000 in debt. I have no idea how you could do that, but they did. So this is what the distribution of debt actually looks like. And if you ask questions about this, you would say that the average debt over all students who graduated from the University of Minnesota is $16,500. And the median, half below and half above, is $12,000. So half of the students who graduated from the University of Minnesota last year as undergraduates had less than $12,000 in debt. Now, why is that important? I think that's important because it changes, I think, a conversation. Because instead of a family who might not have a lot of experience with higher education, first generation family to go to college, maybe a family new to the United States, they think, I'm going to have to take out $27,000 in debt for my student to graduate. Actually, that's not true. And that's an important conversation, I think, that needs to be out there. So here's the other part of the value equation. I don't think anyone can argue that having a college degree in the year of 2014 is an important thing to do. I don't think a lot of people are advising students to not go to college because a high school graduation is all you're going to need. I don't think that's happening. And every bit of data you find shows that people with a college degree have a significantly lower unemployment rate after they're 25 years old and have entered the workforce. But I think this chart tells the most about the value of a degree in the direction of our economy. In recent years, salaries in the United States have remained relatively flat. But the gap between those with four-year degrees and those without continues to widen. So again, I could be talking about complex fluids. I mean, this is data, I know. This is the ratio of hourly pay. Here, people with some college, and here, graduates of a four-year college, the ratio of hourly pay compared to people with a high school degree. You get some college, you get about a 10% bump. You graduate from college in 2013, and you're earning 80% more than a high school graduate. Now, that's the value of going to college in a dollars and cents point of view. So to me, the conversation needs not just to be about the cost of college. That's important, and we need to control it, and it needs to be affordable. But it's the value of the investment a person is making in themselves, and actually that the state is making in developing an educated population. So all of this is against a backdrop of the state's investment in higher ed over the past decade. Let me show you this plot. So in 1997, the state of Minnesota's investment in the university covered about 70% of the cost of going to college. Today, as you can see, it's down to 42%. The other interesting thing about this slide is that in inflation-adjusted dollars, the cost to educate a university student is lower now than it was in 1997. So again, despite what you hear or you read in op-ed columns, we've become more efficient while preparing more students than we did a decade ago. The important part about this slide is not so much that the cost has declined a little bit in constant dollars, we've beat inflation, but the difference here is who pays for higher education. It used to be that the state of Minnesota paid. Now, students and their families pay 58% of the cost. That's the fundamental change and the fundamental driver in tuition costs in higher education. But we are becoming more efficient. I've pledged to reduce administrative costs by $90 million over a 6-year period. We're ahead of schedule in doing that. So that's the short course lesson on the history of the University of Minnesota. I think it's a great story, and it's one we'll be bringing to the 2015 legislative session. We have a few things on the table that we'll take to the state, and I'll summarize those for you very briefly. We want to freeze tuition. We want to improve rural health care by establishing clinics across the state and growing our medical enterprise. We're going to work with our partners in northern Minnesota to make mining more environmentally sustainable. And we want to partner with rural and underserved communities in the metro area to help them develop economic vitality based upon our research. So we're seeking a 10.6% increase in state funding, which would take us to $684 million a year from the state. It's a $3.6 billion organization annually, to give you that perspective. But look at this. This is the final chart, and it is the amount of money appropriated by the state of Minnesota to the University of Minnesota on an annual basis, not adjusted for inflation. And what you see is our peak in 2008, followed by one of the largest disinvestments in higher education of any state in the country, being repaired in the past biennium. And if this request that we're making is fully funded, the University of Minnesota at the end of the next biennium, fiscal year 2017, would receive exactly the same amount of money from the state as it received nearly a decade earlier, not adjusted for inflation. So restoring state funding to 2008 levels doesn't perhaps sound very ambitious, but it is an important investment, and it's one we will be campaigning for. So to close, I think the vision and strategic plan is bold and attainable. It'll set this university apart. It reflects who we are and who we can be. The elements of affordability and our commitment to that is deep. I think our role as the state drivers of innovation and talent creation is pretty much undeniable. We're good stewards of public dollars, and we are working hard in our line of work, which is to create the people who will create the future for the state of Minnesota.